Do you want to be my father today? Asked the girl to the billionaire. He was only 7 days old and had never been a father in his life. But the girl changes everything. Before we dive into the story, drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. Enjoy the story. The manila envelope felt heavier than it should have in Robert Matthews' trembling hands. 7 days. That's what Dr. Harrison had said, his voice barely above a whisper in that sterile hospital room. I'm sorry, Bob. The cancer has spread faster than we anticipated. 7 days, maybe 10 if we're lucky. Bob sat on the old wooden bench in Central Park, watching families celebrate Father's Day around him. Children ran toward their dads with handmade cards, their laughter cutting through the warm June air like tiny daggers to his heart. At 45, he built a tech empire worth $3 billion, but he'd never been called Daddy by anyone who meant it. The irony wasn't lost on him. All those years climbing the corporate ladder, making deals, acquiring companies, and for what? To die alone on a park bench, clutching test results that sentenced him to a week of borrowed time. Excuse me, mister. Bob looked down to find a small girl with tangled auburn hair and eyes the color of summer grass. Her pink dress was wrinkled, her sneakers scuffed, and she carried a wilted dandelion in her tiny fist. Yes, sweetie? Bob's voice caught slightly. The little girl tilted her head, studying him with the intense curiosity only children possess. You look really sad. Are you okay? Bob forced a smile. I'm fine, honey. Where are your parents? The girl's expression shifted, and she looked down at her feet. I don't have a daddy. Mama says he went away before I was born. She paused, then looked up with sudden hope sparkling in her eyes. Do you want to be my daddy today? Just for today? The question hit Bob like a physical blow. He stared at this brave little girl who just asked a dying stranger to be her father for a day. Around them, the park buzzed with Father's Day celebrations, but in this moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. What's your name, sweetheart? Bob asked softly. Emma Grace. I'm 7 years old. She held up 7 fingers proudly. What's your name? Bob. And yes, Emma Grace. His voice cracked as he spoke the words he'd never thought he'd say. I'd be honored to be your daddy today. Emma's face lit up like Christmas morning. She scrambled onto the bench beside him, her small hand finding his. Really? We can do daddy-daughter stuff? Bob nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. This little girl had no idea she'd just given a dying man the greatest gift imaginable. But as Emma chatted excitedly about all the things they could do together, Bob noticed something that made his blood run cold. Around her thin wrist was a hospital bracelet, partially hidden by her sleeve. And when she turned to point at the playground, he caught a glimpse of what looked like a fading bruise on her shoulder. Emma, Bob said carefully, where is your mama right now? Emma's face scrunched up in concentration as she considered Bob's question about her mother. Mama is at the big white building with the nice ladies in white coats. She goes there when she feels really tired and sad, and her hands shake a lot. Emma swung her legs from the bench, her heels barely reaching the ground. The ladies give her medicine that makes her sleep for a really long time, and she doesn't cry as much when she's there. Bob felt his heart sink. The big white building sounded like a treatment facility or psychiatric hospital. How long has your mama been there, sweetheart? 3 sleeps, Emma said, holding up 3 fingers with careful precision. Mrs. Patterson from the apartment next door was supposed to watch me, but she had to go help her own mama who fell down and broke her hip. So I've been taking care of myself. I'm really, really good at it, I promise. Bob's blood ran cold. This 7-year-old had been completely alone for 3 days. Emma, where did you sleep last night? And the night before? In my bed, in my room. I locked all the doors like Mama taught me, and I'd put a chair in front of the door too. I ate the crackers and peanut butter she left on the counter, and I drank water from the sink. Emma's voice was proud and eager to please, but Bob could hear the underlying fear and exhaustion. I only came to the park because I saw all the daddies playing with their kids, and I got really, really lonely. I wanted to see what it felt like to have a daddy, even if it was just pretend. Bob looked at this incredibly brave little girl who'd been abandoned by circumstances completely beyond her control. Here he was, a man who'd just been given 7 days to live, and she'd somehow given him a reason to want to use every single one of them. Emma, would you like to get some real food? Maybe a hot dog, or some ice cream? Whatever you want. Really? For real? Emma's eyes widened with wonder. Mama says ice cream is only for very special occasions, like birthdays or when I'm super good at the doctor's office. Well, meeting your new daddy seems pretty special to me, Bob said softly, standing up from the bench with new purpose. As Emma jumped up eagerly, he noticed she favored her left leg slightly, and there was a pallor to her skin that went beyond simple tiredness. The hospital bracelet around her wrist caught the afternoon sun, and Bob could make out partial words. St. Mary's Pediatric. Emma slipped her small, surprisingly cold hand into his much larger one, and for the first time in months, Bob felt something other than the crushing weight of despair. This little girl had no idea she was walking hand in hand with a man who'd been given a death sentence just hours before. She only knew that, for the first time in her short life, she finally had a daddy for Father's Day. As they walked slowly toward the ice cream vendor, Bob pulled out his phone with his free hand and quickly typed a text to his lawyer. Michael, I need to see you first thing tomorrow morning. This is an emergency that can't wait. Whatever time he had left on this earth, Bob was going to make absolutely sure that Emma Grace Morrison was never alone again. But as they approached the cheerful yellow ice cream cart, Bob noticed Emma's steps becoming more labored, and she was breathing slightly harder than she should be from such a short walk. When she looked up at him with those bright green eyes, he saw something that made his sharp business instincts kick into high gear. Emma was hiding something important, something that went far deeper than just her mother's temporary absence. Emma, Bob said gently, stopping to kneel down at her eye level on the warm concrete. Are you feeling okay right now? You seem a little tired, and I want you to know you can tell me anything at all. Emma bit her bottom lip, a gesture so achingly vulnerable and adult that it nearly broke Bob's heart completely. Promise you won't leave me if I tell you a really big secret? Promise you'll still want to be my daddy? Bob's hands trembled as he looked directly into Emma's earnest green eyes, seeing a depth of worry there that no 7-year-old should ever have to carry. I promise, sweetheart. I absolutely promise I won't leave you, no matter what you tell me. Emma took a deep, shaky breath, her small chest rising and falling with the enormous weight of her secret. The doctors at the big hospital said I have something called leukemia. That's a sickness in my blood that makes me really tired sometimes. She held up her thin wrist, revealing the full text of her medical bracelet. St. Mary's Pediatric Oncology, Emma Grace Morrison Treatment Schedule. Daily Emergency Contact, Dr. Sarachin. The world seemed to completely stop spinning around Bob. He stared at the bracelet, then at Emma's pale complexion, her thin frame, the way she'd been favoring her left leg, the shortness of breath from their short walk. This wasn't just a lonely little girl who'd been abandoned by unfortunate circumstances. This was a child fighting for her very life, battling the same type of monster that was currently destroying him from the inside out. Emma, Bob whispered, his voice thick with emotion and barely controlled panic. How long have you been sick, sweetheart? Since I was 5 years old, Emma said with the matter-of-fact tone that children use when discussing things that should be devastating. Mama says I'm really, really brave, braver than most grown-ups she knows. The doctors give me special medicine through a tube in my arm that makes me throw up sometimes and makes me feel really sick, and all my pretty hair fell out for a while, but it's growing back now. See? She touched her auburn curls with obvious pride. Dr. Sarah says I'm doing really good and that I'm her strongest little fighter. Bob felt hot tears threatening to spill down his cheeks. Here was a 7-year-old girl facing cancer with more courage and grace than he'd managed to show in his entire 45 years of life. She was fighting desperately for every single day while he'd been ready to completely give up after hearing his own diagnosis just hours ago. When was your last treatment, Emma? Bob asked as gently as he could manage. Emma's bright expression immediately fell, and she looked down at her scuffed sneakers. I was supposed to go yesterday morning, but Mama couldn't take me because she was too sick to get out of bed. Mrs. Patterson didn't know anything about the hospital or my treatments, and I was really scared to tell her because I didn't want to worry her or make her sad. Bob's analytical mind began racing at full speed. Emma had missed her cancer treatment because she was completely alone and trying to protect the adults around her. This incredibly brave little girl was not only abandoned but potentially in serious medical danger. Emma, we need to get you to the hospital right now. This is very important. But what about the ice cream you promised? Emma's voice was small and disappointed, but not angry. I was really looking forward to it. Bob knelt down and gently cupped her face in his hands, looking directly into her eyes. I promise you we'll get the biggest, most delicious ice cream sundae they have after we make absolutely sure you're healthy and safe. That's what daddies do. We take care of our little girls first, and then we celebrate. Emma's smile was so bright and genuine it could have powered the entire city of New York. You really, truly are my daddy today, aren't you? As Bob carefully lifted Emma into his arms, surprised by how light and fragile she felt, he made a decision that would change everything. He'd spent his entire adult life accumulating wealth and power, but he never once used either for anything truly meaningful or important. He had 7 days left to live, and this little girl desperately needed him to fight for her. Emma, Bob said as he carried her toward the park exit, walking as quickly as he safely could. How would you feel about having a daddy for much longer than just today? Emma's eyes went wide with hope and wonder. You mean like forever and ever? For as long as I possibly can be, Bob said, the heavy weight of his terminal prognosis sitting like a stone in his chest. But looking at Emma's hopeful, trusting face, he realized something profound and life-changing. Maybe 7 days lived with real purpose and love was worth infinitely more than 45 years lived without any meaning at all. The controlled chaos that Bob remembered from his own medical appointments. Nurses moved efficiently between rooms, their colorful scrubs a stark contrast to the sterile white walls. Bob carried Emma through the familiar corridors, her small hand clutching his shirt as if he might disappear at any moment. The sharp smell of disinfectant and the quiet hum of medical equipment brought back vivid memories of his own devastating diagnosis just hours earlier in this very same building. Emma? A young nurse with kind eyes and purple scrubs rushed toward them, relief flooding her entire face. Oh honey, we've been so worried about you. When you missed your appointment yesterday, Dr. Chen tried calling your mother, but there was no answer. We were about to call social services. I'm really sorry, Nurse Katie, Emma said quietly, shame coloring her voice. This is my daddy. He brought me here as fast as he could. Nurse Katie's eyes met Bob's with a mixture of curiosity and professional concern, but before she could ask any questions, a tall woman in a pristine white coat approached them. Dr. Sarah Chin had intelligent, compassionate eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and the confident bearing of someone who delivered both miraculous news and devastating heartbreak countless times. Emma, sweetheart, we really need to talk right now, Dr. Chin said gently, but Bob could hear the underlying urgency in her voice. And you must be Bob Matthews, he said, extending his hand and noting the firmness of her grip. I found Emma completely alone in Central Park this afternoon. Her mother is apparently in some kind of psychiatric treatment facility, and Emma told me she's been taking care of herself for 3 days. Dr. Chen's expression immediately darkened with concern and barely controlled anger. 3 days? Emma, honey, why didn't you call the hospital? You have our number memorized. I didn't want to bother anyone or make them worry, Emma whispered, tears beginning to form in her eyes. And I was really scared that if I called, they might take me away from Mama forever. Dr. Chin guided them quickly to a quiet, private consultation room decorated with cheerful children's artwork and stuffed animals. Emma, sweetheart, can you play with these toys and maybe color me a picture while I talk to Mr. Matthews for just a few minutes? Once Emma was distracted and settled at the small table, Dr. Chin closed the door and turned to Bob with haunted, exhausted eyes. Mr. Matthews, I need to be completely direct and honest with you about Emma's situation. Her leukemia is particularly aggressive, and we've been fighting it tooth and nail for 2 years now. The treatment has been inconsistent due to her mother's issues. But without absolutely consistent treatment and monitoring, Emma has perhaps 2 weeks left. Maybe less. Bob felt the world tilt dangerously on its axis. 2 weeks? Her mother, Linda Morrison, has been struggling with severe depression and prescription drug addiction for over a year now. The stress of Emma's diagnosis, combined with the crushing financial burden of medical bills, caused a complete breakdown. She's been in and out of various treatment facilities, and 3 months ago, she missed several of Emma's critical appointments. Emma's condition deteriorated significantly during that time. Dr. Chen's voice was steady and professional, but Bob could hear the frustration and sadness underneath. We've involved social services multiple times, but frankly, the system is completely overwhelmed. Emma's been caught in this terrible limbo, and now. Now what? Bob asked, though he dreaded hearing the answer. Now Emma's white blood cell count is critically low, and her immune system is severely compromised. Missing yesterday's treatment was extremely dangerous and potentially life-threatening. She needs immediate, intensive chemotherapy, but more than that, she desperately needs stability and consistency. She needs someone who will be there for every single appointment, someone who won't disappear when things get difficult. Bob looked through the glass partition at Emma, who was carefully coloring a picture of what looked like a rainbow over a house. 7 days. That's what Dr. Harrison had given him to live. 2 weeks. That's what Emma had left without proper care. But while he'd been ready to surrender and give up completely, she was still creating art and finding beauty in the world. Doctor, Bob said quietly, I need to ask you something very important, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Dr. Chen nodded seriously. If Emma had unlimited financial resources, access to the absolute best medical care that money could buy, complete emotional stability, and someone who could be with her for every single moment of treatment, what would her realistic chances be? Dr. Chen studied him carefully, her eyes narrowing slightly. Mr. Matthews, are you talking about legal adoption? Because I need to warn you that the legal process takes months, and Emma doesn't have. I'm talking about whatever it takes. Bob interrupted firmly. Money is absolutely no object whatsoever. I want to know if Emma can beat this disease and live a full, healthy life. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment, clearly weighing her words. With the right treatment protocol, the absolute best medical team, a completely stable environment, and someone who truly cares for her through every setback and celebration, Emma has a real fighting chance. But Mr. Matthews, I have to warn you that it's not just about having unlimited resources. It's about being there for the hardest moments, the inevitable setbacks, the middle-of-the-night scares, the fear. It's about loving a child who might not make it. Bob finished quietly. Doctor, I understand that reality better than you could possibly know. That evening, Bob sat in his luxurious penthouse apartment overlooking Central Park, Emma sleeping peacefully in his guest bedroom after the doctors had administered her emergency treatment. The room was decorated with expensive art and furniture that suddenly seemed meaningless and cold. Emma's small presence had already transformed the sterile space into something that felt like a home for the first time in years. The conversation with Dr. Chen played on repeat in his mind like a broken record. 2 weeks. Emma had 2 weeks without proper care, while he had 7 days regardless of what he did. But there was something else Dr. Chen had said that gave him hope. With the right care and stability, Emma had a real fighting chance. Bob stared at his phone for nearly an hour, knowing he had to make the most difficult and important call of his entire life. Finally, he dialed the number he'd memorized 20 years ago. Michael Harrison speaking. Michael, it's Bob Matthews. I need to tell you something that's going to change everything, and I need your help more than I've ever needed anything. His lawyer's voice immediately shifted from professional to deeply concerned. Bob, what's wrong? Your emergency text this afternoon seemed urgent, but you sounded different. Michael, I got my test results today. I have advanced pancreatic cancer. The doctors say I have maybe a week to live, possibly less. The silence stretched across the phone line for what felt like an eternity. Jesus Christ, Bob. I'm so sorry. This is. How can I help you? What do you need? I need you to draw up emergency adoption papers. Temporary custody documents. Whatever legal mechanism exists to make me responsible for a child immediately. Adoption? Bob, you're not married, you don't have any children, you've never even mentioned wanting a family. What the hell are you talking about? Bob walked to the guest room door and looked at Emma sleeping peacefully, her auburn curls spread across the pillow. I met a little girl today, Michael. Her name is Emma Grace Morrison. She's 7 years old, she's fighting leukemia, and she's been completely alone for 3 days because her mother is in psychiatric treatment for depression and drug addiction. Michael, she walked up to me in Central Park and asked me to be her daddy for Father's Day, and I can't let her go. Bob, listen to me very carefully. You're processing a terminal diagnosis. People make impulsive decisions when they're facing death. These kinds of major life choices are exactly the kind I should be making. Bob interrupted forcefully. Michael, I've spent my entire adult life building a fortune I can't take with me when I die. I have 7 days left, and I found a little girl who desperately needs me to fight for her. What's the point of having $3 billion if I can't use it to save the life of one innocent child? Michael was quiet for a long moment, and Bob could hear him typing on his computer. Bob, even if we could somehow fast-track emergency custody proceedings, you just told me you have 1 week to live. What happens to Emma when you're gone? Have you thought about that? Bob had been thinking about exactly that question all evening. I'm completely changing my will tomorrow. Everything goes to Emma, with you as the executor and legal guardian. But Michael, I need you to understand something crucial. I'm not planning to give up and die quietly. Maybe fighting for Emma will give me a reason to fight for myself. Maybe love is stronger than cancer. Bob, I've been your lawyer for 15 years. I've seen you negotiate billion-dollar deals without blinking. I've never heard you talk like this about anything. Because I've never had a real reason to live until tonight. Through the phone, Bob could hear Michael typing frantically. Okay, I'll start the paperwork first thing tomorrow morning. But Bob, there's something else you need to seriously consider, and it's not going to be easy. What? Emma's mother. Even if she's currently in psychiatric treatment, she still has full parental rights. This isn't just about having money and good intentions. This is about a woman who, despite all her problems and failures, loves her daughter. You can't just take someone's child, no matter how noble your intentions. Bob felt his stomach drop as the reality hit him. In his desperate rush to save Emma, he hadn't fully considered that he might be taking her away from her mother forever. Michael, what if the mother agrees to the arrangement? What if she understands that Emma needs the kind of stability and medical care that she simply can't provide right now? Then we might have a real chance. But Bob, you need to prepare yourself for the hardest conversation of your life. You need to be ready for the possibility that sometimes loving someone means letting them go. As Bob hung up the phone, he heard a small, frightened voice from the doorway. Daddy Bob? I had a really bad dream about being all alone again. Can you please tuck me in and maybe stay with me for a little while? Bob looked at Emma standing in the doorway in her borrowed pajamas, her auburn curls messy from sleep, her eyes wide with the kind of fear that no child should ever have to experience. In that moment, he realized that whether he had 7 days or 7 years left to live, he would spend every single moment fighting for this brave little girl. Of course, sweetheart. Daddy's here, and I'm not going anywhere. The next morning, Bob sat in the sterile visiting room of Riverside Psychiatric Treatment Center, his hands folded tightly in his lap as he waited. Emma was back at the hospital receiving her critical treatment, safely in the capable hands of Dr. Chin and Nurse Katie. Bob had spent most of the night researching Linda Morrison, Emma's mother, and what he'd discovered had broken his heart into 1,000 pieces. Linda Morrison had been a brilliant elementary school art teacher before Emma's diagnosis turned her world upside down. The crushing stress of watching her daughter fight for her life, combined with the overwhelming financial strain of constant medical bills, had led to a complete psychological breakdown. She'd been struggling with depression and prescription drug addiction for over a year, cycling in and out of various treatment facilities. "Mr. Matthews?" A soft, fragile voice interrupted his thoughts. Bob looked up to see a woman in her early 30s, painfully thin and fragile-looking, with Emma's distinctive green eyes and the same auburn hair, though hers was dull and lifeless. Linda Morrison looked like she'd been fighting an impossible war for years and was finally losing the battle. "Ms. Morrison, thank you for agreeing to see me on such short notice," Bob said as gently as he could manage. "I know this must be incredibly difficult." Linda sat across from him at the small table, her hands visibly shaking. "The social worker said you've been taking care of Emma. I need to explain what happened, why I wasn't there for her." "You don't need to explain anything to me," Bob said quietly. "I'm here to talk about Emma's future and how we can work together to save her life." Tears immediately filled Linda's eyes and began spilling down her cheeks. "Mr. Matthews, I love my daughter more than life itself, more than my own existence. But I'm drowning every single day. Every time I try to get better, something terrible happens with Emma's treatment, and I completely fall apart again. I can't be what she needs me to be." Bob leaned forward, his voice gentle but urgent. "Linda, I want to help both of you. But I need to be completely honest with you about something first, and it's going to be difficult to hear." For the next 30 minutes, Bob told Linda everything. About his terminal diagnosis, about meeting Emma in the park on Father's Day, about his vast resources and his absolute determination to fight for Emma's life with everything he had. He watched Linda's face cycle through shock, hope, fear, and finally, a devastating understanding of what he was really asking of her. "You're dying," Linda said quietly, her voice hollow. "Yes, I am. But I'm not giving up without a fight. And I have the resources and connections to give Emma the absolute best possible care and the stability she desperately needs to survive." Linda was quiet for a long time, staring down at her trembling hands. "Mr. Matthews, can I ask you something very personal?" "Anything at all." "Do you love her? I mean, do you really, truly love her? Not just feel sorry for her or want to be a hero, but actually love her the way a father should love his daughter?" Bob thought about Emma's radiant smile, her incredible courage in the face of impossible circumstances, the way she called him Daddy with such hope and trust. "Linda, I've never loved anyone or anything the way I love Emma. She gave me a reason to keep living when I was completely ready to give up and die." Linda nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. "I've been watching my daughter get sicker and sicker while I've been getting sicker and sicker. I know what the right thing to do is, but..." She completely broke down, sobbing. "She's literally all I have left in this world." Bob reached across the table and gently took Linda's hand. "She doesn't have to be all you have. If you let me help Emma, I want to help you too. The best psychiatric treatment available, the finest rehabilitation facilities, unlimited resources for your recovery. You can get better, Linda. And when you do, you'll still be Emma's mother. Nothing will ever change that." Linda looked up through her tears, confusion and hope warring in her expression. "You'd do that for me? Even though you're dying? Even though I'm a stranger who's failed her own daughter?" "Especially because I'm dying," Bob said softly. "Linda, I need you to understand something. I'm not trying to replace you or take Emma away from you forever. I'm trying to save her life. And maybe, if we work together, we can save each other too." Linda stared at him for a long moment, then asked the question that would change everything. "What exactly are you proposing, Mr. Matthews?" Bob pulled out the legal documents Michael had prepared overnight. "Temporary custody with full visitation rights preserved for you. Emma gets immediate access to the best medical care available anywhere in the world. You get the treatment and support you need to recover completely. And when you're ready, when you're healthy and stable, we figure out what's best for Emma together." Linda's hands trembled violently as she looked at the legal documents. "If I sign this, if I let you take my daughter, how do I know you won't just disappear when you get tired of playing daddy to a sick little girl?" Bob met her eyes steadily, his voice firm with conviction. "Because I won't be around long enough to get tired of it. And because Emma deserves to have someone fight for her with absolutely everything they have, even if it's only for a short time. Linda picked up the pen, her hand shaking so badly she could barely hold it. Promise me something, Mr. Matthews. Anything. Promise me you'll tell Emma that giving her to you was the hardest thing I ever did in my entire life, but also the most loving thing I could possibly do for her. As Linda signed the papers, Bob realized this was the moment that would define not only his remaining days but Emma's entire future. But he also realized something else. He might only have 7 days left to live, but he was going to make absolutely certain that Emma had a lifetime of love and care ahead of her. 3 days after Linda signed the custody papers, Bob carried Emma across the threshold of what had once been his sterile penthouse but was now transformed into a child's paradise. He'd hired a team of designers who worked around the clock to create a bedroom that looked like something from a fairy tale: pink walls with hand-painted butterflies, a canopy bed with the softest sheets money could buy, and shelves lined with every book and toy Emma had ever mentioned wanting. "Is this really all for me?" Emma whispered, her green eyes wide with wonder as she took in the magical transformation. "Are you sure you didn't make a mistake?" "No mistake, sweetheart," Bob said softly, setting her down gently. "This is your home now. Every single thing here is yours." Emma ran her small hands over the silk curtains, then turned to Bob with tears in her eyes. "Daddy Bob, I need to tell you something important. The doctor said my white blood cells are getting better, but they also said something else." Bob knelt down to her level, his heart already racing. "What did they say, Emma?" "They said that sometimes kids like me get better for a little while, and then they get sick again. They used a big word. Something." Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, but Bob could see the fear lurking beneath her brave exterior. "Relapse," Bob said quietly. "They're talking about relapse." Emma nodded. "Dr. Chen said I need to be really, really careful and take my medicine every single day, and that even if I get better, I might get sick again someday. She said I'm brave enough to handle knowing the truth." Bob pulled Emma into his arms, holding her close. "Emma, I want you to listen to me very carefully. We're going to fight this together, okay? You and me, we're a team now. And teams don't give up on each other. Even if you get tired of taking care of a sick little girl?" Emma asked, echoing her mother's fears. "Emma Grace Morrison, I could never get tired of you. You're the best thing that's ever happened to me." Bob's voice was firm with conviction. "But I need to tell you something too, something important about why I understand what you're going through." Emma pulled back to look at him, her small face serious. "What do you mean?" Bob took a deep breath, knowing this moment would change everything between them. "Emma, I'm sick too. I have cancer, just like you do. That's why I was so sad when you found me in the park. I had just found out from my doctor." Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. Instead, she reached up and touched Bob's face with her small hand. "Are you scared, Daddy Bob?" "I was scared," Bob admitted. "I was scared until I met you. Now I'm not scared anymore, because I have something to fight for." Emma was quiet for a long moment, processing this information with the wisdom that sick children often possess. "So we're both sick, but we're going to take care of each other?" "That's exactly right, sweetheart. We're going to take care of each other." That night, as Bob tucked Emma into her new bed, she looked up at him with those impossibly green eyes. "Daddy Bob, can I ask you something?" "Anything, Emma." "Do you think Mama will get better too? Like we're going to get better?" Bob felt his heart break a little. Even with everything Linda had put her through, Emma still loved her mother fiercely. "I think your mama loves you very much, and love is a pretty powerful medicine. We're going to make sure she gets the best help possible." Emma smiled sleepily. "Good. Because I want her to meet you when she's feeling better. I think she'll like you." As Bob watched Emma drift off to sleep, he realized that somewhere in the last few days, his perspective had completely shifted. He wasn't just a dying man trying to save a little girl anymore. He was a father, and Emma was his daughter. And that changed everything. The next morning, Bob woke up to find Emma sitting by his bedside, fully dressed and ready for the day. Daddy Bob, I have an idea. What if we make a promise to each other? Bob sat up, intrigued. What kind of promise? Let's promise that no matter what happens with our sickness, we'll always be brave for each other. And let's promise that we'll make every day count, even if we don't have as many days as other people. Bob looked at this incredible 7-year-old who had more wisdom and courage than most adults he knew. Emma Grace, I think that's the best promise anyone has ever asked me to make. They shook hands solemnly, sealing their pact. Neither of them knew that this promise would be tested in ways they couldn't imagine, but they both felt the power of having someone to be brave for. 2 weeks into their new life together, Bob woke up to the sound of Emma being violently sick in the bathroom. He rushed to find her pale and shaking, clutching the edge of the toilet as her small body was racked with nausea. Emma, sweetie, what's wrong? Bob asked, immediately shifting into crisis mode while trying to keep his voice calm. I feel really bad, Daddy Bob. Emma whispered, her voice weak. Everything hurts, and I can't stop throwing up. Bob's medical knowledge from his own recent experience kicked in. He checked Emma's temperature, 103 degrees. Her skin was hot and clammy, and there were small red spots on her arms that he didn't remember seeing before. Emma, we need to get you to the hospital right now, Bob said, already reaching for his phone to call Dr. Chen's emergency line. Am I going to die? Emma asked, her green eyes filled with terror. No, sweetheart. You're going to be fine. Daddy's going to take care of you, Bob said, praying he was right. The emergency room at St. Mary's was a blur of activity. Dr. Chen met them at the entrance, her face grim as she took in Emma's condition. How long has she been like this? Dr. Chen asked as they rushed Emma to a treatment room. I found her like this about an hour ago, Bob said, keeping pace with the gurney. She seemed fine yesterday, maybe a little tired, but nothing unusual. Dr. Chen's team immediately began drawing blood and starting in 4. Bob, I need to tell you something, and I need you to stay calm. Emma's showing signs of a serious infection, which is extremely dangerous for someone with her compromised immune system. Bob felt the world tilt. What does that mean? It means the chemotherapy has made her white blood cell count so low that her body can't fight off infections. This is a critical complication and… Dr. Chen paused, clearly struggling with what to say next. Bob, the next 24 hours are going to be crucial. We need to get her fever down and identify the source of the infection immediately. Bob looked at Emma lying on the hospital bed, so small and fragile, surrounded by all the medical equipment. What are her chances? If we can get the infection under control quickly, she has a good chance. But Bob, I need you to understand that this is exactly the kind of setback that can… Dr. Chen's voice trailed off. That can kill her. Bob finished. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. Yes. Bob felt his own weakness creeping in. The past 2 weeks of caring for Emma had taken a toll on his already failing body. He'd been hiding his increasing fatigue and pain, not wanting to worry Emma or distract from her care. Dr. Chen, I need to ask you something confidentially, Bob said quietly. How long do I have before my own condition becomes apparent to Emma? Dr. Chen studied him carefully. Bob, you look exhausted. Are you taking care of yourself at all? Emma is my priority. I'm fine. You're not fine, Dr. Chen said firmly. Bob, I can see that you're getting weaker. You've lost weight, and you're clearly in pain. You can't take care of Emma if you don't take care of yourself. Bob looked at Emma, who was drifting in and out of consciousness from the fever. Dr. Chen, I need to know. If something happens to me, if I get too sick to care for Emma, what happens to her? Bob, let's focus on getting Emma better first. Then we'll worry about everything else. But Bob could see the concern in Dr. Chen's eyes. The reality was setting in for everyone involved. Both of his patients were fighting for their lives, and time was running out for both of them. That night, Bob sat by Emma's bedside, holding her small hand as she slept fitfully. Her fever had broken, but she was still weak and pale. Around 3 a.m., she woke up and looked at him with those piercing green eyes. Daddy Bob, you look really tired. Are you okay? Bob forced a smile. I'm just worried about you, sweetheart. How are you feeling? Emma studied his face carefully. You're getting sicker, aren't you? I can tell. Bob was quiet for a long moment. Emma, what did we promise each other? To be brave for each other. Emma said softly. That's right. So I'm going to be brave for you, and you're going to be brave for me. We're going to fight this together. Emma squeezed his hand weakly. Daddy Bob, I'm scared. I know, sweetheart. I'm scared too. But we have each other, and that makes us stronger. As Emma drifted back to sleep, Bob realized that their time together was becoming more precious and more fragile with each passing day. He thought he was saving Emma, but she was saving him too, giving him a reason to fight when his body wanted to give up. The next morning, Dr. Chen had news that would change everything. Bob, I need to talk to you about Emma's treatment plan. The infection has cleared, but her body's response to the chemotherapy is becoming more unpredictable. I think it's time we discuss some difficult options. Bob felt his heart sink. What kind of options? There's an experimental treatment program at Johns Hopkins. It's risky, but it might be Emma's best chance for long-term survival. The problem is, it would require you to relocate to Baltimore for at least 6 months. Bob looked at Emma, who was finally eating breakfast and smiling again. Dr. Chen, I'll do whatever it takes. But I need to know. Do you think I have 6 months? The silence that followed answered his question more clearly than words ever could. The private jet Bob had chartered for their trip to Baltimore was equipped with a full medical team, but Emma was more excited about the fact that she could see clouds from above than she was worried about her condition. She pressed her face against the window, her green eyes wide with wonder. Look, Daddy Bob. The clouds look like cotton balls from up here. Emma exclaimed, her voice filled with the kind of joy that only children can find in the midst of difficult circumstances. Bob smiled, watching her enthusiasm despite everything they'd been through. What else do you see, sweetheart? I see lots of little houses and cars that look like toys, Emma said, then turned to him with a more serious expression. Daddy Bob, are you sure about this new hospital? Dr. Chen seemed worried when she talked about it. Bob had been dreading this conversation. The experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins was Emma's best hope, but it was also incredibly risky. The side effects could be severe, and there was no guarantee it would work. But without it, Emma's chances of long-term survival were virtually zero. Emma, do you remember what we talked about when we made our promise to each other? Bob asked gently. That we'd be brave and make every day count. Emma replied. That's right. And sometimes being brave means trying something new, even when it's scary. Bob took her small hand in his. The doctors in Baltimore have a special treatment that might help you get completely better. It's going to be hard, but I'll be with you every step of the way. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing this information. Will it hurt? Bob's heart broke a little. It might hurt sometimes, sweetheart. But I'll be right there with you, and we'll get through it together. Emma nodded solemnly. Okay, Daddy Bob. I trust you. Those 4 words hit Bob harder than any business deal or medical diagnosis ever had. This little girl trusted him completely, and he was about to put her through something that could save her life or make her final days miserable. As the plane began its descent into Baltimore, Bob felt a sharp pain in his chest that he couldn't hide. Emma noticed immediately. Daddy Bob, are you okay? She asked, her voice filled with concern. I'm fine, sweetheart. Just a little tired from the trip. Bob lied, forcing a smile, but Emma's expression told him she wasn't buying it. She'd become incredibly perceptive about his condition over the past few weeks, often seeming to know when he was having a bad day before he did. Daddy Bob, can I tell you something? Emma said quietly. Of course, Emma. You can tell me anything. I know you're getting sicker. I can see it in your eyes, and sometimes you make little noises when you think I'm not listening. Emma's voice was matter-of-fact, but Bob could see the fear underneath. Are you going to leave me? Bob felt tears threatening to spill. Emma, I'm going to fight as hard as I can to stay with you. But if something happens to me, I've made sure you'll be taken care of. You'll never be alone again. But I don't want anyone else, Emma said, tears starting to flow. I want you to be my daddy forever. Bob unbuckled his seatbelt and pulled Emma into his lap, holding her close as she cried. Emma, listen to me. No matter what happens, I will always be your daddy. Even if I can't be with you physically, I'll always be in your heart. And you'll always be in mine. Emma pulled back to look at him. Promise? I promise, sweetheart. And you know I never break my promises to you. The Johns Hopkins Pediatric Oncology Center was unlike anything Bob had ever seen. The facility was state-of-the-art, with artwork covering the walls and play areas designed to make children feel comfortable. But underneath the cheerful exterior, Bob could sense the serious nature of what they were about to undertake. Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the lead researcher for the experimental treatment program, met them in her office. She was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a direct manner that Bob appreciated. Mr. Matthews, Emma, I want to be completely honest with you about what we're proposing, Dr. Martinez said. This treatment has shown promising results in our trials, but it's also more intensive than anything Emma has experienced before. Bob felt Emma's hand tighten in his. What exactly does that mean? It means Emma will be in isolation for the first 2 weeks while we completely destroy her immune system, and then rebuild it. She'll be very sick during this time, and there are risks we can't fully predict. Dr. Martinez's voice was compassionate but firm. The success rate is about 70% for long-term remission, but the 30% who don't respond. The treatment can be fatal. Bob looked at Emma, who was listening intently to every word. Emma, what do you think? Emma was quiet for a long moment. Dr. Martinez, if I don't do this treatment, what happens? Without this treatment, Emma, your current therapy will eventually stop working. You might have a few months, maybe a year if we're very lucky. Emma nodded, then looked up at Bob. Daddy Bob, I want to try. I want to get better so I can take care of you when you're sick. Bob felt his heart shatter and heal simultaneously. This brave little girl was willing to risk everything not just for herself, but for him. Okay, sweetheart. We'll do this together. As Dr. Martinez began explaining the details of the treatment protocol, Bob realized that the next few weeks would either be the beginning of Emma's recovery or the end of everything they'd built together. But looking at Emma's determined face, he knew they had to try. That night, in their temporary apartment near the hospital, Emma fell asleep in Bob's arms for what might be the last time before she entered isolation. As he held her, Bob made a silent vow. He would find a way to survive long enough to see Emma through this, no matter what it cost him. On the third day of Emma's isolation treatment, Bob collapsed in the hospital corridor outside her room. When he woke up, he was in a bed in the adult oncology wing, with Dr. Martinez and a man he didn't recognize standing beside him. Mr. Matthews, this is Dr. James Harrison, an oncologist here at Johns Hopkins. Dr. Martinez said gently. We've been in contact with your doctor in New York. Bob tried to sit up, panic flooding through him. Emma. I need to see Emma. She's expecting me. Bob, you need to listen to me, Dr. Harrison said firmly. Your condition has deteriorated significantly. The stress of caring for Emma, combined with your refusal to seek treatment for yourself, has accelerated your cancer's progression. I don't care about my cancer, Bob said desperately. Emma needs me. She's alone in that room, and she's scared. Dr. Martinez exchanged a look with Dr. Harrison. Bob, we've been monitoring Emma's progress, and we need to talk to you about something important. Bob's heart raced. Is she okay? Is the treatment working? The treatment is working better than we hoped, Dr. Martinez said, a smile breaking across her face. Emma's response has been remarkable. Her white blood cell count is rebuilding faster than we've ever seen, and there are no signs of the leukemia cells. Bob felt a wave of relief wash over him. That's incredible. She's going to be okay? It's too early to say definitively, but the signs are very promising, Dr. Martinez said. But Bob, there's something else. Something we discovered in Emma's blood work that changes everything. Dr. Harrison pulled out a chair and sat down beside Bob's bed. Bob, we ran some additional tests on Emma's blood, and we found something unusual. Her blood contains antibodies that are extremely rare, antibodies that appear to have natural cancer-fighting properties. Bob stared at them, not understanding. What does that mean? It means Emma's blood might contain the key to treating not just her leukemia, but other forms of cancer as well. Dr. Martinez explained. We've never seen anything like it. Bob felt the world spinning. Are you saying Emma's blood could help other people? We're saying Emma's blood might help save your life. Dr. Harrison said quietly. The silence in the room was deafening. Bob looked from one doctor to the other, trying to process what they were telling him. You're saying Emma could cure me? Bob whispered. We're saying we'd like to try a treatment using Emma's antibodies. Dr. Martinez said carefully. It's completely experimental, and there are no guarantees. But Bob, your cancer is aggressive, and traditional treatments aren't working. This might be your only chance. Bob felt tears streaming down his face. Does Emma know? Not yet. We wanted to talk to you first. Dr. Harrison said. Bob, you need to understand something. If this treatment works, if Emma's antibodies can help treat your cancer, it could change everything. Not just for you, but for cancer treatment in general. Bob looked toward the window, in the direction of Emma's room. What would it involve? Regular transfusions of Emma's blood plasma, combined with a modified chemotherapy regimen. Dr. Martinez explained. The process would be intensive, and we don't know what the side effects might be. And Emma? What would this mean for her? Emma would need to give blood regularly, but not more than is safe for a child her age. And Bob, if this works, if her antibodies can help you, it means she truly is as special as we thought. Bob was quiet for a long time, thinking about everything that had brought him to this moment. I need to talk to Emma. She deserves to know what's happening. Bob, she's only 7 years old. Dr. Harrison said gently. She's 7 years old, but she's been fighting cancer for 2 years. She's braver and stronger than most adults I know. Bob said firmly. If there's a chance her blood could save my life, she deserves to be part of that decision. 3 hours later, Bob was wheeled into Emma's isolation room, both of them wearing protective gear. Emma's face lit up when she saw him. Daddy Bob. I was so worried about you. The nurses said you were sick, but they wouldn't tell me what was wrong. Bob took her small hand in his. Emma, I need to tell you something important. The doctors discovered something amazing about your blood. What kind of amazing? Emma asked, her green eyes curious. Your blood has special things in it that might help fight cancer. Not just your cancer, but other people's cancer too. Emma's eyes widened. Really? My blood is special? Very special, sweetheart. And the doctors think it might help make me better. Emma was quiet for a moment, processing this information. So if I give you some of my blood, you might get better? It's possible. But Emma, I need you to understand that this is completely your choice. If you don't want to do it, that's okay. Emma looked at him with those impossibly mature eyes. Daddy Bob, you saved my life. If my blood can save yours, then of course I want to help. Bob felt his heart overflow with love for this incredible little girl. Emma, you've already saved my life in ways you can't imagine. Emma smiled, that radiant smile that had captivated him from the first moment he saw her. Then let's save each other, Daddy Bob. Let's both get better together. As Bob held Emma's hand, he realized that this little girl who had asked him to be her daddy for one day had become his salvation in more ways than one. And now, miraculously, she might become his cure as well. 6 weeks into the experimental treatment using Emma's antibodies, Bob sat in the treatment room watching his daughter color pictures while her blood slowly flowed through the foreline. Emma had insisted on being present during his treatments, claiming it made her feel like they were fighting the monster together. How are you feeling today, Daddy Bob? Emma asked, not looking up from her drawing of a rainbow over a castle. Better, sweetheart. Much better, Bob said, and for the first time in months he wasn't lying. The combination of Emma's antibodies and the modified chemotherapy had reduced his tumor markers by 60%. Dr. Harrison called it unprecedented. Emma looked up at him with those knowing green eyes. You really do look better. Your skin isn't gray anymore, and you're not making those little pain sounds when you think I'm not listening. Bob marveled at how perceptive she was. Emma, how are you feeling about all this? Are you tired of giving blood to help me? Emma set down her crayons and looked at him seriously. Daddy Bob, when I was little and really sick, before I met you, I used to wonder why God made me sick. Now I think maybe He made me sick so I could help make you better. Bob felt tears welling up in his eyes. Emma, you are the most amazing little girl I've ever known. I know, Emma said with a grin, making Bob laugh despite the emotional moment. Dr. Martinez entered the room with a smile that Bob had learned to recognize as very good news. Good morning, you two. I have some updates I think you'll want to hear. Emma immediately perked up. Good news or bad news? Very good news, Dr. Martinez said, sitting down beside them. Emma, your latest scans show absolutely no signs of leukemia. You're officially in complete remission. Emma's eyes went wide. Does that mean I'm not sick anymore? It means the cancer is gone, sweetheart. You'll need to keep coming for checkups, but you're healthy, Dr. Martinez said, then turned to Bob. And Bob, your latest scans show that your tumor has shrunk by 75%. Your oncologist in New York says it's the most dramatic response to treatment he's ever seen. Bob felt the world shift around him. Are you saying I'm going to live? I'm saying you're responding remarkably well to treatment. We can't make any guarantees, but Bob, you're defying every prediction we made about your prognosis. Emma jumped up from her chair and hugged Bob carefully, mindful of his foreline. We did it, Daddy Bob. We both got better. Bob held her close, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had happened. We did it, sweetheart. We saved each other. Dr. Martinez watched them with tears in her eyes. There's something else I need to tell you both. The research team has been studying Emma's antibodies, and we believe we've isolated the component that's been so effective. We're going to begin clinical trials using synthetic versions of Emma's antibodies to treat other cancer patients. Emma looked confused. What does that mean? It means your blood might help save lots of other people, not just Daddy Bob. Dr. Martinez explained gently. Emma's face lit up. Really? My blood can help other kids who are sick like I was. Yes, Emma. You might help save hundreds, maybe thousands of lives. Bob looked at his daughter, this incredible little girl who had transformed from a dying child into a miracle that could save others. Emma, how do you feel about that? Emma was quiet for a moment, then smiled. I feel happy. If I had to get sick so I could help other people get better, then I'm glad I got sick. Bob marveled at her wisdom and generosity. Emma, you are going to change the world. We're going to change the world, Daddy Bob. Together. That afternoon, as they walked through the hospital corridors, Emma suddenly stopped and turned to Bob. Daddy Bob, I have a question. What is it, sweetheart? When we first met, you said you only had 7 days to live. How many days do you think we have now? Bob looked at this little girl who had saved his life in every possible way. I don't know, Emma. But I know we have today, and that's all that matters. Emma nodded solemnly. Then let's make today count. Bob took her hand, and they walked toward the exit, toward their future together. In the distance, Bob could see other families arriving for treatment, carrying the same fear and desperation he'd felt months ago. But now, thanks to Emma, there was hope. As they stepped into the afternoon sunlight, Bob realized that the little girl who had asked him to be her daddy for one day had given him something far more precious than time. She'd given him purpose, love, and the chance to help save others. Emma, Bob said as they got into the car, I think it's time we went home to New York. There's someone I want you to meet. Who? Emma asked curiously. Your mother. I think she's ready to meet the little girl who saved the world. Emma's smile was radiant. Do you think she'll be proud of me? Emma Grace Morrison, I think she'll be the proudest mother in the world. As they drove away from Johns Hopkins, Bob knew that their story was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Emma's discovery would change cancer treatment forever, and they would be there to help guide other families through the same journey they had survived. But most importantly, They would face whatever came next together, a father and daughter who had saved each other's lives and found a way to save others in the process. 1 year later, Bob stood in the same spot in Central Park where he'd first met Emma, but everything had changed. The bench where a dying man had once sat in despair was now surrounded by families participating in the first annual Emma's Hope Father's Day celebration, an event dedicated to raising awareness for pediatric cancer research. Emma, now 8 years old and glowing with health, ran toward him with a ribbon in her hand. "Daddy Bob. Look what Dr. Martinez gave me." Bob knelt down as Emma showed him the ribbon that read, "Emma Grace Morrison Foundation, Saving Lives Through Love." Behind her, he could see the massive banner that stretched across the park. 1 year cancer-free. Emma's antibodies have saved 847 lives. "How does it feel to be famous, sweetheart?" Bob asked, straightening the ribbon proudly. Emma wrinkled her nose. "I don't like being famous. I just like that kids don't have to be as scared as I was." Bob's heart swelled with pride. Even with all the attention from medical journals, news interviews, and research teams wanting to study her miraculous antibodies, Emma remained the same humble, caring little girl who had asked him to be her daddy. "Emma? Bob!" A familiar voice called out. Bob turned to see Linda Morrison walking toward them, and his breath caught. The woman approaching them bore little resemblance to the broken, fragile person he'd met in the psychiatric facility. Linda's hair was shiny and healthy, her skin had color, and most importantly, her eyes were clear and bright. "Mama!" Emma ran to Linda, who swept her up in a hug. "My beautiful, brave girl," Linda whispered, holding Emma tight. "I'm so proud of you." Bob watched the reunion with mixed emotions. Over the past year, as Linda had gotten sober and rebuilt her life, he'd wondered if this day would come, the day when Emma's mother was ready to be a mother again. "Bob," Linda said, approaching him with Emma's hand in hers, "I can never thank you enough for what you've done. You saved her life when I couldn't." "Linda, you don't need to thank me," Bob said quietly. "Emma saved my life too." Linda smiled, tears in her eyes. "I know she did. And I have something I want to ask you both." Emma looked up at her mother curiously. "What is it, Mama?" Linda took a deep breath. "Emma, I know Bob has been your daddy for over a year now, and I know how much you love each other. I was wondering, how would you feel about Bob being your daddy forever? Officially?" Emma's eyes went wide. "You mean like adoption? Real adoption?" "I mean," Linda said, looking at Bob with gratitude, "I think every little girl deserves to have both a mama and a daddy who love her. And Bob, I can't think of anyone I'd rather share that honor with." Bob felt tears streaming down his face. "Linda, are you sure?" "Bob, you've given Emma everything I couldn't: stability, the best medical care, unconditional love. But more than that, you've given her hope and purpose. You've shown her that she can use her experience to help others." Linda's voice was steady and sure. "I don't want to take Emma away from you. I want us to be a family. All of us." Emma looked back and forth between her parents, her face glowing with joy. "So I get to keep both of you? Forever?" "Forever," Bob and Linda said in unison. As the three of them embraced, Bob reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this moment. He'd gone from being a lonely billionaire with 7 days to live to a father, a cancer survivor, and the co-founder of a foundation that was changing the world. "Daddy Bob," Emma said, pulling back to look at him. "Do you remember what you told me about making every day count?" "I remember, sweetheart." "Well, I've been thinking about all the days we've had together, and all the days we're going to have, and I think we've done a pretty good job." Bob laughed, amazed by her wisdom. "I think we have too, Emma." Dr. Martinez appeared beside them, her face beaming. "I hate to interrupt this beautiful moment, but I have some news I think you'll want to hear." "What is it, Dr. Martinez?" Emma asked. "We just got word from the FDA. The treatment based on your antibodies has been approved for general use. Emma, your blood is officially going to be used to save children all over the world." Emma's eyes filled with tears of joy. "Really? Kids everywhere won't have to be scared anymore?" Because of you, sweetheart. Because of your courage and your generosity, Dr. Martinez said. Bob looked at his daughter, this incredible little girl who had transformed from a dying child into a beacon of hope for thousands of families. Emma, you did it. You really did save the world. Emma shook her head, smiling. No, Daddy Bob. We saved each other. And now we get to help save other people too. As the Father's Day celebration continued around them, Bob realized that the day he'd planned to be his last had actually been the first day of the most meaningful life he could have imagined. He'd discovered that love truly was stronger than death, that hope could triumph over despair, and that sometimes the smallest person could have the biggest impact. Emma, Bob said, taking her hand as they walked back toward the celebration. I have something to tell you. What is it, Daddy Bob? Remember when you asked me to be your daddy for just one day? Emma nodded. Well, I want you to know that day was the best day of my life. But every day since then has been even better, because I get to be your daddy forever. Emma squeezed his hand. And I get to be your daughter forever. That makes us both pretty lucky, doesn't it? As they rejoined the celebration, surrounded by families who had been touched by Emma's story, Bob knew that their journey was far from over. There would be more children to help, more families to support, and more hope to share with the world. But most importantly, there would be countless more days of being Emma's daddy, watching her grow, and marveling at the extraordinary little girl who had asked a dying stranger to be her father and had ended up saving his life in return. The girl who had wanted a daddy for one day had given him a lifetime of purpose, love, and hope. And together, they had proven that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is simply the love between a father and his daughter. As the sun set over Central Park, Bob realized that he'd never again worry about how many days he had left. Instead, he would focus on making each day count, surrounded by the love of his family, and the knowledge that Emma's legacy would continue to save lives for generations to come. The man who had once been dying alone was now living fully, with a daughter who had taught him that every day is a gift, and love is the greatest miracle of all.